Why my stream keeps cutting out.
Real-world violence, and increasingly extreme calls to stop the steal. We established that after he lost the election, the president was willing to do just about anything to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. That he tried everything he could do to stop it. You'll recall the evidence on the screen. Him pressuring and threatening state election officials, attacking them to the point of literally calling them enemies of the state, threatening at least one of them with criminal penalties. Then attacking senators, members of Congress, all across the media, pressuring the Justice Department, prompting outcries from assistant U.S. attorneys, not to mention his own attorney general, reportedly telling him that the stolen election claims were, quote, BS, not my phrase, his. And then, as January 6th approached, he moved on to attacking his own vice president, openly and savagely. We recounted throughout that entire period all the ways in which President Trump inflamed his supporters with lies that the election was stolen. And as every single one of us knows, nothing in this country is more sacred, nothing, than our right to vote, our voice. And here you have the President of the United States telling his supporters that their voice, that their rights as Americans were being stolen from them, ripped away. That made them angry. Angry enough to stop the steal, to fight like hell to stop the steal. And we showed you this. You saw the endless tweets, the rallies, the statements encouraging and spreading that big lie. You saw that he did this over and over again with the same message each time. You must fight to win it back. You must never surrender, no matter what.
The Shao Kahn must swing.
And remember, each time that his supporters along the way showed violence, he endorsed it, encouraged it, praised it. All part of that same demand to stop the steal and fight like hell. Remember the video that Manager Plaskett showed you from Texas? Some of his supporters encircling a bus of campaign workers on a highway. People easily could have been killed, easily. What did he do? He tweeted it and made a joke about it at a rally. Called them patriots, held them out as an example of what it means to stop the steal. When he told his supporters to stop the steal, they took up arms to literally intimidate officials to overturn the election results. You saw the evidence, and so did he. And he welcomed it. And when President Trump attacked Georgia's Secretary of State for certifying the results, his supporters sent death threats. You saw those in great detail from Manager Dean. What did he do? He attacked the election officials further. When his supporters gathered together to have a second Million MAGA rally, that's the rally that Manager Plaskett showed you, a rally about the stolen election, he tweeted that the fight had just begun. What happened next? It's not rocket science. Fights broke out, stabbings, serious violence. Now, President Trump, like all of us, he saw what happened at that rally. He saw all the violence, the burnings, the chaos. How did he respond? He tweeted praise of the event. And then, see it on the screen, he bought $50 million worth of ads to further promote his message to those exact same people. He immediately joined forces with that very same group. He joined forces with the same people that had just erupted into violence. Was violence predictable? Was it obvious that the crowd on January 6th was poised for violence? Prepared for it? Absolutely. And this isn't just clear, looking back in time. It was widely recognized at the time. In the days leading up to January 6th, there were dozens, hundreds of warnings. And he knew it. He knew the rally would explode if provoked. He knew all it would take was a slight push. Remember, you heard from Manager Plaskett, the chatter on social media, websites that the Trump administration monitored and were known to the Trump operation. It showed that the people he invited to the January 6th rally took this as a serious call to arms. That this was not just any attack. It was to storm the Capitol if necessary, to stop the steal. And it wasn't just clear on these websites that the Trump administration was monitoring. I mean, the FBI issued reports about this as a credible threat, a threat to target us. Law enforcement made 6 arrests that night before. 6 arrests. Newspapers across the city warned of the risk of the violence. There can be no doubt that the risk of violence was foreseeable. And what did he do in the days leading up to the rally? Did he calm the situation? Ask yourself. I mean, did he call for peace? No. He didn't do that. He spread his big lie more. The most dangerous lie, as I mentioned, that Americans' votes were being stolen and that the final act of theft would occur here in the Capitol. And then he assembled all of those supporters. He invited them to an organized event on a specific day, at a specific time, matched perfectly to coincide with the joint session of Congress, to coincide with the steal that he had told them to stop by any and all means. Again, he was told by law enforcement and all over the news that these people were armed and ready for real violence. He knew it. I mean,
wait a minute. I didn't see the messages Lucia Lopez hit. What did Lucia Lopez say? I was going to flame them. They were saying dumb shit.
Just how combustible that situation was. He knew there were people before him who had prepared, who were armed and armored. He knew they would jump to violence at any signal, at any sign from him that he needed them to fight, that he needed them to stop the steal. And we all know what happened next.
Oh, of course. Yeah, what a jackass. That's the first time that's happened on Twitch.
Did he encourage the violence?
I'm glad y'all got that.
Standing in that powder keg.
I didn't even notice that. I was still trying to get my stream back running again. That's the first time that's happened on Twitch.
Everyone knows the answer to that question.
Usually it's YouTube.
The hours of video you all have watched leave no doubt. Just remember what he said on January 6th.
All of us here today do not want to see our election victory stolen. There's never been anything like this. It's a pure theft in American history. Everybody knows it. Make no mistake, this election was stolen from you, from me, and from the country.
at the opening of...
We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved. And to use a favorite term that all of you people really came up with, we will stop the steal. We must stop the steal. We will not let them silence your voices. We're not going to let it happen. Not going to let it happen. Thank you. And you have to get your people to fight, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong. And we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
You may remember at the outset of this trial that I told you you'd hear three phrases over and over and over again. The big lie that the election had been stolen, stop the steal and never concede, and fight like hell to stop that steal. You heard those phrases throughout the course of this trial, video after video, statement after statement, telling his supporters that they should be patriots, to fight hard to stop the steal. And on that day, where did he direct the crowd's ire? He directed them here, to Congress. He quite literally, at one part of that speech, pointed at us. He told them to fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
Facts. He did say that shit.
And here's the thing, that wasn't metaphorical. It wasn't rhetorical. He'd already made it perfectly clear that when he said fight, he meant it. And that when followers, in fact, fought, when they engaged in violence, that he'd praise and honor them as patriots. He implied that it was okay to break the law because the election was being stolen. You heard it. You remember the clip that Manager Dean showed you earlier in this trial. He told them, quote is on the screen, when you catch somebody in a fraud, you're allowed to go by very different rules. Remember how all of his
he just makes shit up.
Some of his supporters across social media were treating this as a war, talking about bringing in the cavalry? Well, President Trump made clear what those different rules were. He'd been making it clear for months.
So, let's have trial by combat.
I said that.
And Rudy, you did a great job. He's got guts. You know what? He's got guts, unlike a lot of people in the Republican Party. He's got guts. He fights.
His message was crystal clear. And it was understood immediately, instantly, by his followers. And we don't have to guess. We don't have to guess as to how they reacted. We can look at how people reacted to what he said. You saw them, and you saw the violence. It's pretty simple. He said it, and they did it. And we know this because they told us. They told us in real time during the attack. You saw the affidavits, the interviews on social media, on live TV. They were doing this for him because he asked them to. And it wasn't just insurrectionists who confirmed this. Many, many people, including current and former officials immediately recognized that the president had incited the crowd, that he alone was capable of stopping the violence, that he did this and he had to call it off because he was the only one who could. Let's see what Representative McCarthy, Representative Gallagher, Chris Christie, Representative Kinzinger, and Representative Katko had to say.
I could not be sadder or more disappointed with the way our country looks at this very moment. People are getting hurt. Anyone involved in this, if you're hearing me, hear me very loud and clear. This is not the American way.
Mr. President, you have got to stop this. You are the only person who can call this off. Call it off.
Pretty simple. The president caused this protest to occur. He's the only one who can make it stop. What the president said is not good enough. The president has to come out and tell his supporters to leave the Capitol grounds and to allow the Congress to do their business peacefully. And anything short of that is an abrogation of his responsibility.
You know, a guy that knows how to tweet very aggressively on Twitter, puts out one of the weakest statements in one of the saddest days in American history.
The president's role in this insurrection is undeniable, both on social media ahead of January 6th and in his speech that day. He deliberately promoted baseless theories, creating a combustible environment of misinformation and division. To allow the President of the United States to incite this attack without consequences is a direct threat to the future of this democracy.
Took the building once.
Did the president encourage violence?
There's not even an NBC logo on the fucking...
No doubt that he did.
I genuinely hate this whole fucking
Final
DNCA
question.
shit.
Did the president act willfully in his actions that encouraged violence? Well, let's look at the facts. He stood before an armed, angry crowd known to be ready for violence at his provocation. And what did he do? He provoked them. He aimed them here, told them to fight like hell. And that's exactly what they did. And his conduct throughout the rest of that terrible day really only confirms that he acted willfully. I mean, that he incited the crowd and then engaged in a dereliction of duty while he continued inflaming the violence. And again, we don't have to guess what he thought because he told us. Remember the video he released at 4:17 p.m.? Lead Manager Raskin showed that to you yesterday. The one where he said, quote, "We had an election that was stolen from us." Remember the tweet that he put out just a couple hours later, 6:01 p.m. on January 6th. You've seen it many times. You could see it on the slide. That these are the things that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away. That is what he was focused on. Spreading the big lie and praising the mob that attacked us and our government. You heard Manager Cicilline describe reports. The president was delighted, enthusiastic, confused that others didn't share his excitement as he watched the attack unfold on TV. He cared more about pressing his efforts to overturn the election than he did about saving lives, our lives. Look at what President Trump did that day after the rally. It's important. He did virtually nothing. We've seen, Manager Castro mentioned this, that when President Trump wants to stop something, he does so simply, easily, quickly. But aside from 4 tweets and a short clip during the over 5-hour-long attack, he did nothing. On January 6th, he didn't condemn the attack. He didn't condemn the attackers. Didn't say that he would send help to defend us or defend law enforcement. He didn't react to the violence with shock or horror or dismay as we did. He didn't immediately rush to Twitter and demand in the clearest possible terms that the mob disperse, that they stop it, that they retreat. Instead, he issued messages in the afternoon that sided with them. The insurrectionists who had left police officers battered and bloodied. He reacted exactly the way someone would react if they were delighted, and exactly unlike how a person would react if they were angry at how their followers were acting. Again, ask yourself how many lives would have been saved, how much pain and trauma would have been avoided if he had reacted the way that a president of the United States is supposed to act. There are two parts of President Trump's failure here, his dereliction of duty, that I just have to emphasize for a moment. First is what he did to Vice President Mike Pence, the Vice President of the United States of America. His own Vice President was in this building with an armed mob shouting, "Hang him." This same armed mob that set up gallows outside. You saw those pictures.
So wild, yo.
And what did President Trump do? He attacked him more. He singled him out by name. It's honestly hard to fathom. Second, our law enforcement. The brave officers who were sacrificing their lives to defend us, who could not evacuate or seek cover because they were protecting us. I'm not going to go through again what my fellow managers showed you yesterday, but let me just say this. Those officers serve us faithfully and dutifully, and they follow their oaths. They deserved a president who upholds his, who would not risk their lives and safety to retain power. A president who would preserve, protect, and defend them. But that's not what he did. When they, the police, still barricaded and being attacked with poles, he said in his video to the people attacking them, "We love you. You're very special." What more could we possibly need to know about President Trump's state of mind? Senators, the evidence is clear. We showed you statements, videos, affidavits that prove President Trump incited an insurrection that he alone had the power to stop. And the fact that he didn't stop it, the fact that he incited a lawless attack and abdicated his duty to defend us from it, the fact that he actually further inflamed that mob, attacking his vice president while assassins were pursuing him in this Capitol, more than requires conviction and disqualification. We humbly ask you to convict President Trump for the crime for which he is overwhelmingly guilty of. Because if you don't, if we pretend this didn't happen, or worse, if we let it go unanswered, saying it won't happen again.
It's going to happen again, because they're not going to convict him. I just realized I'm listening to this on the computer. And so you guys probably heard that on stream. Sorry, that was my music.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, first of all, thank you for your close attention and seriousness of purpose that you've demonstrated over the last few days. Thank you also for your courtesy to the House managers as we've come over here, strangers in a strange land, to make our case before this distinguished and august body. We are about to close, and I am proud that our managers have been so disciplined and so focused. I think we are closing somewhere between 5 and 6 hours under the time that you have allotted to us. But we think we have been able to tell you everything we need to say. We will obviously have the opportunity to address your questions and then to do a final closing when we get there. I just wanted to leave you with a few thoughts. And again, I'm not going to re-traumatize you by going through the evidence once again. I just wanted to leave you with a few thoughts to consider as you enter upon this very high and difficult duty that you have to render impartial justice in this case, as you have all sworn to do. And I wanted to start simply by saying that in the history of humanity, democracy is an extremely rare and fragile and precarious and transitory thing.
Sorry, I was trying to listen to it on my phone, specifically because
vowed that
you can't hear
government
it on stream.
People, by the people,
like you
for
can't
the people
hear
shall
sound
not
coming from my phone.
perish from the earth. But he was speaking
and it was all
not
pixelated,
long
so
after
I was like,
the
fuck, I'm gonna just listen to it on
Republic
the
was
PC.
created.
Did not realize
And he was trying to prove that point,
like, oh,
that we would not allow it
it's probably
to perish from the earth. For most of history, the norm has been dictators, autocrats, bullies, despots, tyrants, cowards who take over our governments. For most of the history of the world. And that's why America is such a miracle. We were founded on the extraordinary principles of the inalienable rights of the people and the consent of the governed and the fundamental equality of all of us. You know, when Lincoln said, government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and he hearkened back to the Declaration of Independence when he said 7 years ago, he knew that that wasn't how we started. We started imperfectly. We started as a slave republic. Lincoln knew that. But he was struggling to make the country better. And however flawed the founders were as men in their times, they inscribed in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution all the beautiful principles that we needed to open America up to successive waves of political struggle and constitutional change and transformation in the country. So we really would become something much more like Lincoln's beautiful vision of government of the people, by the people, and for the people, the world's greatest multiracial, multi-religious, multi-ethnic, constitutional democracy, the envy of the world.
Seems very excited to get slam dunked when
as Tom Paine said, an asylum for humanity where people would come. Think about the preamble. Those first 3 words, pregnant with such meaning, we the people. And then all of the purposes of our government.
It baffles me
action-packed
how the Democrats
sentence. We the people
don't understand
form a more perfect
that
union,
the Republicans have literally been waiting for 3 days to teabag this shit straight out of the fucking
promote the general welfare, and preserve to ourselves and
they
our
are
posterity
not going to convict Donald Trump.
The blessings of liberty. And then, right after that first sentence, the mission statement for America in the Constitution, what happens? Article 1, the Congress is created. All legislative powers herein are reserved to the Congress of the United States. You see what just happened?
And don't get me wrong, for people like us, This
to
was
launch
dummy
the country
informative.
And create the Constitution.
Like, this was some
right
heat.
into Congress, and then
And it was
you
content.
get
You feel me? Like,
in Article 1, Section 8.
I had never considered
vast powers
like,
that all of you know so well. The power to regulate.
Yeah,
commerce,
the Republicans have been decided
the power
on this
to
since
declare
they announced that they were getting
war,
ready to impeach
the
him
power
again.
to
Since the articles were
raise
filed, they
budgets
knew what
and
they were going to
taxes
do.
and to
So I don't get all the
money, the power to govern
effort that they
the seat
put
of
in
government,
to get teabagged.
and on and on.
This
and
is
on.
literally
And then even
just
in
for
Article 1,
show.
Section 8,
It's
Clause
literally
18, and all
because
other
on some
powers
level they have to
necessary
know
and
that
proper
they're
to
not going to
execution
go
of
through
the
with this
foregoing
conviction.
powers.
They have
That's
to
all
know
of
that
us.
this is
And
more
then you
so
get to
for
Article
people at
2,
home to
the
understand
president, 4 short paragraphs.
what exactly happened
fourth
on
paragraph is
January
all about
6th
what?
and get the
Impeachment.
full totality of all the
How you
events that
get rid
occurred.
of a
Because
president
there is
who commits
mad shit from these
high crimes and
proceedings that I
misdemeanors,
didn't
but
know
what's the
about.
core
I didn't
job
know.
of the president?
We talked about that
To
yesterday.
take care
It was
that
crazy
the
just
laws
how
are
close
faithfully
Mike Pence and
executed.
the senators came to getting boobopped
And our
on
friends
national
were so
television.
fearful
But
of presidents becoming tyrants and wanting to become kings
at
and
the end of the day, it
despots
doesn't mean
that they
anything
put
because it's going to
the
happen
oath of
again.
office
It's going to continue to
right
happen
into the
because
Constitution.
the thing
They
that
inscribed it
people
into
don't
the
understand
Constitution
is that the bedrock of American
to
society is
preserve,
white
protect,
supremacy.
and defend the Constitution.
Yeah, Marjorie Goof
of the
Taylor
United
straight tried to
States.
impeach Biden for no reason. Like, come on now, they
We've got
know
the power
what
to
time
impeach
it
the
is.
president.
They
The
know what
president
fucking
doesn't have the
time it is.
power to impeach us. Think about
Marjorie
that.
Taylor Greene got fucking teabagged straight out of
The
fucking
popular
Congress
branch
too,
of
though.
government has the power to
Took
impeach
her
the
straight
president.
off all her
the
fucking
president does not
assignments.
have the power to impeach us. And as I said before, all of us who aspire and attain to public office are nothing but the servants of the people. And the way the framers would have it is the moment.
Oops, whoops. No wonder that shit was all crispy in my fucking ears. My headset was ready to come unplugged. There we go.
Convict, disqualify, start all over again. Because
Yeah, this was
the
definitely all
interests
for
of
the people.
are
This
so
is
much
for
greater
they're
than the interests of one
1000%
person.
preaching to the
Any one
choir
person,
here.
even the greatest person in the
Because,
country.
like I said earlier, people commonly
count.
underestimate just how fucking brain dead Republicans are.
When we sit down and we close, our distinguished counterparts, the defense counsel, who have waited very patiently, and thank you, will stand up and seek to defend the president's conduct on the facts, which I think they will. It has already been decided by the Senate on Tuesday that the Senate has constitutional jurisdiction over this impeachment case brought to you by the United States House of Representatives. So we've put that jurisdictional constitutional issue to bed. It is over. It's already been voted on. This is a trial on the facts of what happened. An incitement, as we said, is a fact-intensive investigation and judgment that each of you will have to make. We've made our very best effort to set forth every single relevant fact that we know
Right,
in the most
Fade?
objective
And yeah, this
and
guy's
honest
got a
light.
cartwheel up out of here.
We trust and we hope that the defense will understand the constitutional gravity and solemnity of this trial by focusing like a laser beam on the facts.
They don't,
and
'cause they
not
stand to gain
return
power
to
from
the
all the
constitutional
shit
argument
going
that's
through.
already been decided by the Senate. Just as a defense lawyer who loses a motion to dismiss
Turn that off.
on a constitutional basis in a criminal case must let that go and then focus on the facts which are being presented by the prosecutors in detail, they must let this constitutional jurisdictional argument go.
Oh my God.
Not just because it's frivolous and wrong, as
Nobody
nearly
just doxed
every
myself on
expert
stream.
scholar in America opined, but because it's not irrelevant to the jury's consideration of the facts of the case. So our friends must work to answer all of the overwhelming, detailed, specific, factual, and documentary evidence we have introduced of the president's clear and overwhelming guilt in inciting violent insurrection against the Union. Now, Donald Trump last week turned down our invitation
Doxing intensifies.
to come
I didn't
testify
dox
about his
myself like those
actions,
kids on my
and
fucking
therefore we've
Facebook.
not been able to ask him any
personal
questions
Facebook.
directly as of this point. Therefore, during the course of their 16-hour
That's the crazy
allotted
thing, Fade Runner, is that even if he
we
got
will pose these
convicted
preliminary
and barred
questions to his
from
lawyers,
running again in 2024,
which I
he's
think
still
are
a
on everyone's
kingmaker.
minds right now, in
Like,
which we would have asked
there's
Mr.
no way
Trump
to make
himself
Republicans not
if
brain
he had chosen
dead.
to
There's
come
no
and testify
way
about his
to
actions and inactions.
pull people out of the cult You know what I'm
when we
saying?
invited him last week.
Because that's what it is at this point,
One,
a cult of
why did
personality.
President Trump not tell his supporters to stop the attack on the Capitol as soon as he learned of it? Why did President Trump do nothing to stop the attack for at least 2 hours after the attack began? As our constitutional commander-in-chief, why did he do nothing to send help?
I think he'll endorse someone.
To our
He'll endorse
overwhelmed
someone
and
just
besieged
because
law
he's such a
enforcement
fucking
officers for at least 2 hours
narcissist
on
that even when he gets
January 16th,
nothing, as long
after
as
the
he gets
attack
positive
began.
attention from his followers, he'll do whatever they want him to do.
On January 6th, why did President
if that
Trump not
means-
at any point that day
Just like how he endorsed
condemn
that
the violent
one,
insurrection and the
person
insurrectionists?
in government that was like literally a fucking chomo
And
or whatever
I'll add a
that
legal
got
question
reelected.
that I hope
he had no dog in
his
that
distinguished
fight.
counsel will address.
But
If a
that's what his
president did
followers wanted him
invite
to do.
a violent
did it.
insurrection against our government, as of course we allege and think we've proven in this case, but
He's probably
just
got
in
still
general,
people sending him-
if a
still got
president
people sending him
incited a
dummy
violent
money.
insurrection against our government, would that be a high crime and misdemeanor? Can we all agree at least on that? Senators, I've talked a lot about common sense in this trial because I believe that's all you need to arrive at the right answer here. You know, when Tom Paine wrote Common Sense, the pamphlet that launched the American Revolution, he said that common sense really meant two different things. One, common sense is the understanding that we all have without advanced learning and education. Common sense is the sense accessible to everybody, but common sense is also the sense that we all have in common as a community. Senators, America, we need to exercise our common sense about what happened. Let's not get caught up in a lot of outlandish lawyers' theories here. Exercise your common sense about what just took place in our country. Tom Paine wasn't an American, as you know, but he came over to help us in our great revolutionary struggle against the kings and queens and the tyrants. And in 1776, in the crisis, he wrote these beautiful words. It was a very tough time for the country. People didn't know which way things were going to go. Were we going to win? Against all hope? Because for most of the rest of human history, it had been the kings and the queens and the tyrants and the nobles lording it over the common people. Could political self-government work in America was the question. And Paine wrote this pamphlet called The Crisis, and in it, he said these beautiful words. And with your permission, I'm going to update the language a little bit, pursuant to a suggestion of Speaker Pelosi, so as not to offend modern sensibilities, okay? But he said, these are the times that try men and women's souls. These are the times that try men and women's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will shrink at this moment from the service of their cause and their country. But everyone who stands with us now will win the love and the favor and the affection of every man and every woman for all time. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered, but we have this saving consolation. The more difficult the struggle, the more glorious in the end will be our victory. Good luck in your deliberations.
So that's the end, I guess, for today.
Lead House impeachment manager Jamie Raskin came back to the microphone briefly, but essentially wrapping up the prosecution's initial presentation. There will be time for a more formal closing argument later on in the trial, but essentially done with their presentation, not using nearly the allotted 16 hours that they had been given. Much shorter presentation today, not as dramatic as what we saw yesterday, but still a heavy use of video. In this last section, really trying to pre-butt what they expect the defense arguments to be, that whatever the president said was protected by the First Amendment, that he was not given due process, trying to answer all those ahead of time before the defense, when they take over tomorrow, that they might bring forward. Let's bring in NBC News political director and moderator of Meet the Press, Chuck Todd. Chuck, give us your assessment of the day and the totality of this argument by the House managers.
Well, look, I think in this most recent 2-hour session, I think Jamie Raskin just obliterated the First Amendment argument that the Trump attorneys are going to try to make. And in that sense, I think that's where the presentation today was at its strongest. I do think, and we're already seeing some, I do think they did some things today that I would call they had to do. They had to make the argument about how this looks internationally, and they wanted to make the argument about how this has been a 5-year, that this has been building. But I think these are tougher arguments to get that 15 to 20 Republicans that might be listening, that they might be able to flip on this, to buy into that. And we've
those
seen some
15
evidence of that.
to 20 Republicans
take this bigger picture
do not fucking
Lester,
exist.
The 3 days of presentation. I mean, this was an extraordinarily well done.
And a lot of Republicans at home
Jamie Raskin and
aren't even watching
this
shit.
Managers in general.
They have no idea about
particularly the first.
That's the saddest
first 3
part.
days. Really,
Is it the only people paying attention who know about any of this, or people like
the
us
initial
who already
debate over
are already
obviously the
we already know
constitutionality
what it
of
is.
things. But it was methodical, but also not dry. It was gripping at times. It was, in many cases, absolutely necessary.
I'm gonna go ahead and end this because I think we've seen all that we're going to see off of that. So yeah, that's how that is. I might play some. It's a game called 9 to 5. It's this military game that my boy Sock got me into. It's free to play right now because it's in beta. Beta. So yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. Oh, thank you. Shout out to Human Roadkill. He actually hand drew that logo for me. I just threw it in Photoshop and played with the colors and everything. But I'm probably go back live again in like 30 minutes. It's not gonna be long, for real. I will take a minute to make myself a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich because I'm fucking hungry. Then we're going to play some games. I'm going to play some 9 to 5, either that or some Hunt Showdown to show you guys. And we're going to also obviously talk more about all this impeachment stuff that we've been watching over the last couple of days to kind of process that and decompress that. So thanks for watching this stream, everyone. Sorry it cut out and I had to start over in the middle. They were stopping coverage of the trial on various right-wing stations. Oh, of course, because they were getting cooked. They knew that shit looks bad. Yeah, they knew that shit looks bad. They were saying that Trump's lawyer left in the middle of the trial yesterday to go talk to Fox News to tell him about how bullshit the trial was. Like, unbelievable. Unbelievable. So, spoiler alert, Trump will not be getting convicted. They will not get enough Republicans to vote for this to convict Trump. He will probably be running again in 2024. And all this is probably going to happen all over again in 4 years. And to take it a step further, because of how fucking hard the Democrats who are in power now are botching every possible thing that they could possibly be wanting to do, including the stimulus check where they said, vote for us, you get $2,000 next week. And that became $1,400 that, McDonald's is going to fucking bring High C back before we get our fucking $1,400 checks. So yeah, the Democrats are probably going to get fucking teabagged in 2022 again and get primaried to shit again. And we're probably going to have a Republican conservative majority again in 2024. So get ready for that. And we live in a fucking capitalist fucking hellhole. Shit is not right out here. We're not going to get Medicare for all. We are not going to get student loan debt relief. And so on that note, I hope you guys will join me again in a few minutes when I play Hunt or 9 to 5 and we can hang out and talk some more. But right now,